Did you know that it's not just us fans who argue over who would win at a fight when it comes to comic book characters? I know, I was just as shocked. There was even a whole event during the 90s where the two big companies had their best heroes clash. Granted, it was the fans who got to vote on the outcome, but it was the writers and the artists who actually got to decide how those heroes' fights would play out. There was a time when DC and Marvel didn't quite have the same rivalry that they do now, and crossovers weren't that uncommon. Today we're going to look at one of those old classic crossovers and argue about the time that Superman met up with Spider-Man. Of course, like every good superhero team-up, there has to be a moment of misunderstanding, when both heroes think that the other one is up to no good and they have to duke it out, test each other's abilities. It was such a common practice that they started to make fun of it in the 90s and the early 2000s. Hell, they even did the same thing in the first Avengers movie. Batman v Superman was even just a long version of this big misunderstanding over to the big fight in the finale. For those who don't know, let's get a brief amount of history out of the way. Spider-Man first appeared in Amazing Fantasy number 15 in the ancient times of 1962 and was created by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee. Peter Parker was a crazy idea for superheroes in that he was the star of the book but was actually a teenager with real-life problems. At this time, teenagers were regulated to sidekicks and superheroes did not really have problems outside of their costumes. Peter was given spider powers after being bitten by a radioactive spider. These included a measure of super strength, agility, spider sense, and the ability to stick to walls. He created web shooters and became the Amazing Spider-Man after his Uncle Ben is killed by a mugger, learning that great power must also come with great responsibility. Superman first appeared in Action Comics number 1 in the prehistoric times of 1939 and was created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. The last surviving son of the planet Krypton, Kal-El, was sent in a rocket to Earth, where he was discovered in rural Kansas by the Kents. Raised as Clark Kent, he was brought up to do the right thing, eventually moving to Metropolis, where he works as a reporter while protecting the city and eventually the world. Under the yellow sun, Superman has super strength, flight speed, heat vision, super breath, hearing, and he's practically invulnerable. Superman vs. Spider-Man was originally published in 1976 as a joint venture between the two companies and was written by Jerry Conway. Because it was the 70s, both characters were written slightly differently than most modern readers are used to. Also, their power levels are quite different. The book opens up with some battles for each of the characters. You see, over in Metropolis, Superman was alerted to a giant robot terrorizing the city, seemingly making its way to Star Labs. Superman tries to fight it, but he's quickly knocked away while it manages to steal a computer chip from the labs. Superman rushes back to the fight, managing to knock the robot off balance, forcing it to eject its head. And after he chases after the head, Lex Luthor pulls himself from a hidden cockpit in the robot's body and escapes, having outsmarted the Man of Steel. Superman briefly heads back to the Daily Planet where he manages to avoid some classic inner office pranks, before heading out once more as Superman to track the robot's origins to Lex Luthor's lab underneath Metropolis Bay. You gotta remember, this is back in that time period where the villains had secret evil layers. They have a brief fight where Lex gets the upper hand by hitting Superman with a red sun laser, but Superman eventually wins, sending Lex to prison. Meanwhile, over in New York, a group of thieves are robbing a museum, and they're stopped by the spectacular Spider-Man. It's revealed that they are actually working for Dr. Octopus, who appears and is very proud of his flying octopus fortress. He manages to defeat Spider-Man and get away, thanks to the help of the police who open fire on Spider-Man. That menace! Peter Parker heads back to the Daily Bugle, where he is subjected to what could only be called workplace harassment by his boss, before leaving for a date with MJ. In classic Spider-Man style, he ditches MJ to go fight Dr. Octopus, leaping onto his flying octopus fortress and finally defeating him. Doc Ock is sent to the same prison as Lex Luthor, and the two become best friends, with Lex Luthor helping them both break out. The last shot is of Lex piggybacking on Doc Ock, and it's hilarious. You see, back on these classic issues, they didn't even need to come up with an excuse, no multiversal hijinks or whatever. Spider-Man just happened to be in New York, and Superman's over Metropolis. They're not the same city, it makes sense. Meanwhile, back over at New York City at the World's News Conference, Clark Kent and Lois Lane, Peter Parker and Mary Jane are all at the same conference. Both heroes have some issues in their personal lives and cause everyone to separate. Peter briefly meets Lois Lane, causing some jealousy from Mary Jane, but the situation is interrupted by Superman, who appears and hits both women with his disappearing vision. Peter is shocked and quickly looks for a phone booth to change into Spider-Man. With none available, he heads up to the roof, changing into the spectacular Spider-Man, while Clark quickly changes into Superman. Both meet up on the rooftop, while Lex and Otto are watching from a distance. The bell rings, and the fight begins. And now I'll give you our more traditional narrative read. As he flies towards the wall crawler, Superman comments that he's heard reports of the criminal. He demands to know what he did with Lois Lane and MJ, and what he has to do with the other version of Superman, or you'll be sorry. Superman takes a swing at the wall crawler, but Spidey flips out of the way, demanding to know what Superman did with the two ladies. Superman seems surprised, believing that Spider-Man is more of a villain. Otto and Lex watch from a distance, commenting that their plan is working perfectly. They have managed to pit Spider-Man and Superman against each other. Lex aims his red sun gun at Spider-Man, wishing to give him a bit more of an edge in the fight. That red sun radiation gives Spider-Man a boost in his strength, meaning that he might be on a level playing field with Superman. Superman flies towards the wall crawler, telling him that there might have been a mistake. "You bet there's been a mistake! Then you made it!" Spider-Man shouts, slamming his fist into the Man of Steel. The blow surprises Superman, throwing him towards the earth, but he manages to regain his flight before he slams into a nearby statue, possibly hurting someone. I don't know where Spider-Man got such power, but at this moment, I don't care. That fool web spinner has made me mad. Superman snaps angrily as he launches himself back into the air. Spider-Man swings around on his web line, kicking Superman hard in the face. "I got a newsflash for you, Supes. You're not half as tough as you think you are." Spider-Man quips into a nearby wall. He then swings away, shocked that he's doing so much damage. This is supposed to be one of the toughest guys around, and here I am fighting him like he's some common crook. Superman struggles up, telling Spider-Man that he needs to calm down so we can talk this out. But Spider-Man hits him again, knocking Superman off the roof. "Stuff it, Superman! I've been bossed around all day, but not anymore." Superman pulls himself back up onto the roof, promising to teach Spider-Man a lesson. He uses his super speed to dodge another one of Spider-Man's attacks, leaving Spider-Man completely open. Superman then goes in for a punch, but realizes that if he hits Spider-Man, it could kill him. So he pulls his punch at the last minute. The blow still lands with such power, though, that it sends Spider-Man sailing across the roof and through the nearby window of a nearby building. But the wall crawler quickly recovers, leaping out onto another window, quickly scaling the building, meeting Superman on the roof. "Spider-Man, wait! This fighting won't get us anywhere," Superman tries to tell him as Spider-Man flips across the roof towards him. He jumps into the air, drop-kicking the Man of Steel in the chest, but the blow connects just as the red sun radiation wears off, and Spider-Man falls flat to the ground. "Man, how'd you get so hard all of a sudden? Is this a trick or what?" He gets up, lashing out at Superman, and as the punch connects, Spider-Man merely hurts his own hand. He hits him again and again, but Superman merely stands there taking the blows as Spider-Man demands to know where Mary Jane is. "Oh boy, I broke my hands," Spider-Man gasps as he finally stops hitting the Man of Steel. "Ready to talk, web slinger?" Superman asks him finally, and the two finally talk it out for a moment to discover that they've been duped. The two heroes finally decide that they're going to work together, shaking on it. The rest of the issue sees Superman and Spider-Man tracking down Otto and Lex. They follow them to an abandoned warehouse where Spider-Man must make his way through the several death traps while Superman merely blasts through the front door. But they find that the villains aren't there and are merely sending them transmissions from an abandoned Injustice gang base orbiting the planet. Both heroes make their way into space, finally making their way to the station where they confront the deadly pair. It is only after Spider-Man convinces Doc Ock that if the world is destroyed he won't have anywhere to spend his money that the heroes manage to defeat the two villains. Finally returning them to jail, the two heroes change back into their civilian personas and return to the World News Conference. Everyone is safe and sound, and Clark shows off his latest story on the event. Peter Parker appears showing off his photos, and both find it odd that neither saw each other at the event. But both bosses are happy, and Peter and Clark take Mary Jane and Lois out to lunch. And there you have it, the officially approved by both companies fight between Superman and Spider-Man. Of course, this was before the days of the 90s, 2000s, and further, where everything became bigger, flashier, and far more extreme. Superhero fights weren't quite as epic yet, and it was mostly about trading blows back and forth. Superman didn't even use any of his powers really in this storyline. Sure, he didn't want to punch a hole through Spider-Man's head, but he could have used his super speed to avoid everything after the first blow. Could have used his super breath to blow Spider-Man off the building. Plus, Spider-Man was suddenly powered up by Lex Luthor, and we see that when that wears off, even the advanced strength of Spider-Man is clearly no match for the Man of Steel. So let's look back at this fight again and do our own little spin on it, a more modern day take with the arguments here in the office as to who would win. Peter quickly heads up to the roof of the conference building, not bothering to look for any phone booth since those things don't exist anymore. Flipping up to an antenna, he spots the quickly approaching Man of Steel. Superman sees the wall crawler and knows from his job as a reporter that Spider-Man is considered a criminal in New York, even though he's usually saving the day. While he doesn't think that he has anything to do with the disappearance of Lois and MJ, he does need to officially get some answers. He swoops in towards Spider-Man, trying not to attack but merely questioning him. In the distance, Lex and Otto watch with glee. Lex hits Spider-Man with a red sun radiation ray just like they did in the comic. Spider-Man would then move forward, demanding to know what Superman did with MJ. Superman tries to talk to him, but Spider-Man lashes out, cracking him across the jaw. The blow sends Superman across the rooftop, sailing through the air and plummeting to the earth. Superman is more than shocked that hurt and quickly regains his flight, managing to stop before he slams into the ground and possibly hurts someone. He flies back up, prepared to fight now, having not realized just how strong Spider-Man really was. As he flies through the air, he sees Spider-Man swinging towards him. He merely blows out a quick super breath, throwing Spider-Man's swing off, sending him twisting into the air all kinds of crazy. The wall crawler manages to catch himself though, swinging away and sticking to another wall. Superman continues to try and talk to him, but the web slinger shoots another web, yanking him through the air, slamming him into the wall. He quickly scales up the building, rushing up to the rooftop as Superman flies to intercept him. He lands on the roof, telling Spider-Man that the fight is over. Spidey comes in, trying to hit Superman with several blows. The Man of Steel's speed allows him to avoid all of it completely. Finally reaches out, flicking Spider-Man gently, sending him flying through the air through the window of a nearby building. Spider-Man struggles to his feet. He leaps out the window, trying to get back at Superman. Swinging through the air, he manages to get a kick out and hit Superman in the chest, but the blow does nothing as Spidey's red sun power has now worn off. Superman grabs him, flying him up into the air as Spider-Man struggles to breathe. But the wall crawler realizes that whatever extra strength he seemed to have is suddenly gone. After they fly high enough into the air that Spider-Man can't swing off anything, Superman stops. He doesn't threaten the wall crawler. He merely explains that it seems that they have been tricked. He knows that what the media says about Spider-Man isn't true, and he doesn't believe that he had anything to do with the two women who went missing. So, Spider-Man finally agrees after he calms down, and the two agree to work with each other. And there you have it, a new version of our Versus series. We're trying to get you guys some great moments within comics, explain them a little bit better, and just kind of go in depth as to what's happening. So you're going to start seeing these pop up on a nearly weekly basis right here at the Comicstorian channel. Thank you guys so much for your continued support, and I will see you next time right here.